story should have a message, something to take away from. John F. Kennedy said the only reason to speak in public is to change the world. So there should be some sort of message in there.
That's a little heavy, though.
A little heavy.
That's a really light thought.
If I'm telling a story about my first time on stage, I'm not
No
gonna change the
pressure.
world.
But that story, I've screwed up, and you can too, and you can get better from it, and you can make this something in your life. So there is a message even in that story. For those of you that don't know, well, you'll have to listen to Dave's story because we both know it.
Yeah, we both know that story. So, and then speech writing. The third one.
So when you stand up is like a rhythm. The punchline goes at the end. Storytelling, the most important word, it goes at the end of every sentence. When you're doing it, the more you understand your story, the more time you can take to tell it. The biggest mistake people make with stories is they try to put 10 minutes of information into a 7-minute story. So they squeeze information in and squeeze their audience out. Speech writing is to be remembered for one or two things, and take away a soundbite in a lot of instances. Storytelling's to kind of get some sort of a message or some sort of enjoyment. Enjoyment's another thing that's a reasonable takeaway from a story. So that's okay too. But stand-up is just pure. It's like bang, 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 bang. Let's go.
Your LPMs are down.
Yeah.
Your laughs per minute are down.
Yeah.
That's a complete. What I found was when I started telling stories, it's quiet in the room. It turns out people are listening. That's why it's quiet. But my training in stand-up was, oh my God, it's quiet. That's death. So I would speed up, and that screwed everything up.
When I started doing business seminars, I would say something that they should know, and they all looked down for me and started taking notes. And I'm like, how rude of them. I got a joke coming up here soon. Look at me.
Yeah, exactly.
So totally different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. How long did you do Toastmasters?
I'm still in it.
Good.
I think it's about 12 years now. I think it was about a year or two when I told that story. So I competed last year. I'm not competing this year in that world championship of public speaking, but that's something that's always kind of fun to do, and you run into some good people. And in that story, one of the things that I was kind of shocked to hear, and I go, that's a great piece of advice. If you stand around good people, good things happen, good things fall off, and good things happen to you. Yeah. I learned that so much during COVID, and
you were standing next to people during COVID.
I was hanging out.
Bad idea.
I was hanging out in my non-germy Zoom cube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. With the little, and then the cool thing was when people would freeze on purpose and the cat tail goes across. That's a whole nother thing.
Nice. So what good things happened to this good person? Besides meeting Lisa Westerhoff.
I started doing, I thought I was doing seminars across the country for a seminar company, and COVID hit, so I couldn't do that anymore. So I figured, well, there goes the mortgage, there goes everything. And I started doing work for companies and work for speakers from my couch on Zoom. And I got in the paper a few times. And one thing just led to another, and it started taking off, and started working with more and more companies. I met a guy named Jeff Rogers, who ex-Second City, and he owns an improv. Oh. He owns Players Workshop in Chicago, which is the oldest improv thing there. And we've done a lot of things together, doing business storytelling, which is really just the same thing as stand-up.
Wow.
You just make a point at the end.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, that's brilliant. That's good. That was funny. That was brilliant. So many companies don't realize that what laughter does for their bottom line. For example, salespeople that make people happy sell 37% more than salespeople that don't. And so if you can do that and make people smile when you buy things, and
how is that measurable?
How's that? I don't know.
37%,
I let the people that did all that. That's a good question, though. I never really thought about that.
Because they're just making up numbers.
It could be.
Yeah,
there's these two
37
women.
37 sounds good. Yeah,
by the way, that sounds really good. 37%.
37%.
Yeah,
sure. Why not?
Yeah. And if you don't even have to be funny to get the benefit of humor. Sure. So if you send emails with the little cute cartoon at the bottom, you get just as much credit as the funniest guy in the room.
You have to steal the cartoon, but
yeah.
By the way, there's people slaving away to get those statistics to us, Dave.
To do what?
To get those statistics, the 37%.
Oh, the 37% people? Yeah.
There's actually a book called Humor Seriously, written by a couple of Stanford professors that teach a class in business humor that has just as much credit as financial accounting.
Nice.
See?
I don't care about that 37%. Yeah. 37% of those people can get. Totally kidding. So, do you always have a plan B?
I make one up on the fly if I don't, but I don't have one going in. I don't take my own advice a lot of times. That's
your dad's advice, right?
Yeah. My dad, all my friends thought my dad was funny, but he was my dad, so he wasn't.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. And then how do you start with a story? I mean, you've told, I don't know, 30, 35 stories for us.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And how do you decide this is my story? I'm going to put my stake in the ground right here, and this is what I'm going to tell. And
it depends how it starts. A lot of times I'll come up with a line that I really like, and I'll think, okay, so how does this relate to my life? Is there something that happened to me that relates to this? That's one way it happens. And I usually come up with 5 or 6 lines, and then I have this story, and people go, that's like 3 stories. Okay, we got to chop them up. The story that I was talking about in that thing that I went to the World Championship public speaking with, I developed for you guys. And
thank you.
It was the it was the night you were back at the original place, at the framing place. And you, the theme was heroes. And I think I went to, I don't know where the hell, the Hideaway or something like that at 5:30, and the show was at 7. And I wrote the word heroes on the top of a piece of paper. And the first thing that came to mind was a song lyric, because I'm huge on song lyrics.
Sure.
And I wrote down, remember all the movies, Terry, that we'd go see where you had to learn to walk like the heroes we thought we had to be. Okay, who do I have the heroes? That is Backstreets by Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
And I came up with 2, and one was my 5th grade teacher. The other was my high school baseball coach. And that night, they both had flaws in them, but they were both my heroes. And so I talked about both of them. I talked about the flaws they had, and one was pretty significant, and he didn't make the cut in the final version of the story. But I was like, is he still my hero, even though I know this about him later? And I said he was, because he welcomed me as family, and he sold me his car for $100. I told everybody in the school that he did that so I wouldn't transfer to Marin Catholic, But so song lyrics, lines, I could see anything and go, okay, I can make a story out of that. The thing that I wrote down today was, in stories, there's a reason that Disney movies are so popular, because people want to see a happy ending.
Sure.
So if you're telling something to somebody, you should Disney it instead of Tarantino it. Yeah. And so that's something I truly believe in. Actually, we've had a conversation about that.
Yeah, nice.
So that will probably be a story at some point. So it's just anything that happens. You can see an ant crawling on a wall, and I can make up a reason to tell a story around it.
Wow, you're a genius.
It's very Stephen King-y too,
Well, yeah, but I don't make that ant come alive and eat you from the bottom up,
But just, being prolific like that too is not, you take it for granted, man.
Yeah, you do. You wonder why everybody else doesn't do it. And then you realize that it's not. And that's what I learned during COVID, is I met a lot of Hall of Fame speakers. And I was sitting there listening to Hall of Fame speakers, and I'm like going, you're okay. But I don't know where the Hall of Fame is that has you in it, and it gave me the confidence to realize that, okay, I'm at their level, so why not get paid at their level?
There you go.
So that's a good thing.
And do you write everything out and then edit from there? How do you go about the story?
It depends. And there's somebody calling you to give you my ideas on that right there. I
appreciate that.
And
there's a couple.
It totally like if you say, okay, you're going to speak in 2 minutes, I'll just either pull something or pull a combination of things together and see where it goes from there. I have notebook after notebook after notebook after notebook of stuff I've written down. I physically write it down.
Yeah.
I type
pen
it
on paper.
I type things in the computer, and
that's
they
like
disappear.
Serial killer stuff, though, having a bunch of notebooks, isn't it?
It is a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by serial killers too. So,
yeah.
But that speech that went to the World Championship, I probably have different versions from the floor to about here of it. and I evolved it, and it's actually a much better story now than it was back then. And it has a couple other pieces of advice in there that weren't in there before, but like the thumping in your chest. It's not your heart, it's your dreams knocking on your door.
Okay.
And that came from my fifth grade teacher. The other thing too is sometimes you write down a really good idea and realize if you say it yourself, it comes across as smug. But if you have your dad say it, it comes across as brilliant.
So you just...
The emotional truth is more important than the real truth.
Do you have one of those, or that comes to mind, or...
That one, the thumping in the heart, that I give it to the fifth grade teacher. But I was writing this story. I go, man, that would be a great line if that actually was true. And I emotionally believe that. And he actually made me fight through that thumping in my chest. So he didn't say it, but he made me do it.
Wow.
So, but when I put that line in, that story kind of took off, and it's still a signature story I tell. I tell it in workshops. I tell it in everything.
So you write everything out, and then you edit, and then what do you do with the edited stuff? Because I have a file that's my dump, and I just put everything in there, and then I'll look back at it and see, oh, I can use that.
What's funny is when you go back to those things and you look, you go, I wrote this? You're like, wow, this person's really good. This can't be mine,
Exactly.
And you have these feelings about it. But yeah, so there's dump files, there's other notebooks. I try and every once in a while I go through one and I put it in another, and I try and keep a stack of these are done. I don't know why I don't throw them away. That's probably a better thing to do. Yeah. But that's like tossing your children out,
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Nice. So we write the story. Do you look at our themes and then decide, I have 3 stories that would fit in that theme, or I need to write a story for that theme? Or you just bail and don't show up?
How can I remotely make this story attach somewhat to the theme? And if the theme is like heroes, maybe I'll say, heroes, let's go. And then, then we're covered, so it depends on, and sometimes I have a story that I want to tell that night, and it's kind of like, I've got to get it out of my mouth. Oh, you're talking about Goldilocks. Well, I'm talking about being bear in the forest. Same thing. 3 bears, I'm bear in the forest. So I'll just tell it anyway, because there's a lot of people there. If you listen to the story, they go, the theme was what?
Yeah.
And so, and I know, especially these days, there's not 10 people to tell a lot. So, okay, I'll bring this in and do that. But sometimes I write down, like the one time I wrote down the word and I did it from there. Other times I think, what do I have that fits? The last one was swing for the fences. Okay. Yeah. I've got like 3 stories that fit for that, but what can I tell right now that would be new and different that I can get out of my mouth that would go to that? So I try and bring something new. Sometimes I bring something old. I would, you have to win once to get in the Grand Slam. So sometimes you got to step up a little bit and like, let's dust this thing off and bring it in or see if it still works.
Nice.
But yeah, it varies quite a bit with those things. Sometimes I switch, and when I go in there with an idea to tell one story, it's like, oh, okay, I'll tell another one.
Yeah. Maybe someone else has touched on that theme or what have you. And
one time I went in and there were like, my mom has dementia, and there were like 3 other people that told stories about a parent with dementia. I'm going, all right, chance to win this one's out the window. Yeah. Usually you can lean on mom with dementia and get like sympathy votes, but not that time. They split.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So technically, what do you do for a living?
I have a company called Leadership Through Laughter, and I coach people creating stories. I also coach businesses to help them tell their story and teach their salespeople how to tell their company's story, so people actually lean in and say, really tell me more, instead of you're trying to sell me something. Yeah. So I teach people the fine art of influence, which if you look at it for good, it's called influence. If it's for bad, it's called manipulation. And it's the same process either way. So if you teach it from a Disney point of mind, it comes out good. If you teach it from the other point of mind, then all of a sudden you're Ted Bundy.
Yeah. That's not good. Yeah, that's not good.
Which apparently is very popular on Netflix.
Being Ted Bundy is very popular.
Yeah. That sounds like a good name for a book. Being Ted Bundy.
No, that was Dahmer. I got my guys mixed up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. These guys that kill lots of people. It's like that.
Yeah, whatever.
So, where do you tell stories anywhere else, or do you? I mean, I know you speak in front of people all over the place.
And what people don't realize is these stories, be it a 2-minute story, a 5-minute story, a 10-minute story. If you ever go see a keynote person, what they're probably doing is they have a premise and they tell a story and they make a point. And so all the things that happen to you in your life make a point about something. And to fill up 45 minutes,